this is the continent with the world's poorest people, with the world's leanest economies. So how on earth is it possible that you are having all these non-state actors, all these terror groups, all these rebel groups constantly coming out of the woodwork to fight for what exactly, and who is behind them? Where is the pipeline financing them? Where is the logistical capacity coming from?
USA has followed up to the expose done by David Hundeyin when he exposed how the US government sent nothing less than 500 million within a space of 1 week into Nigeria. Today, Nigeria is seen as the safe haven for perpetrating corruption, most especially under this APC regime. Donald Trump has now vowed he has instructed the US Nigeria embassy, and he has also instructed Elon Musk, go and investigate the people, the elements, the NGOs that receive over $500 million within a space of 1 week, just within short period of time that they know that I will be inaugurated. Because Donald Trump has the tag as the man of truth, as the man who has dedicated his life to expose all the high-level corruption that is going on across Africa and the rest of the world. The African people must continue to celebrate Donald Trump. Because why? Donald Trump has come in as a man that wants African people to understand that they can survive and thrive without the interference of the United States of America. Can you imagine if a Donald Trump was the president, as at when Buhari was still in power? There are two things that wouldn't have happened. First and foremost, an Nnamdi Kanu wouldn't still be incarcerated to today. And secondly, and possibly, a Tinubu who was alleged to have rigged a quantum rigging that brought him into power, he wouldn't have gotten that recognition, which was hastily done by Biden. He wouldn't have gotten that legitimacy by the United States of America. In fact, a Donald Trump could have even questioned that what is going on in Nigeria is not democracy, but what agbada-tocracy. So today, David Hundeyin came out. This is a man who has been known for investigative journalism. Today, he cannot stay in Nigeria because he is one of the people who sits at the top of search lists for the Tinubu administration. During the election time, David Hundeyin exposed how Tinubu was heavily involved in narcotic business. You know, David Hundeyin even went ahead to expose the irregularities in Tinubu's educational backgrounds, because it got to a point Atiku Abubakar had to call David Hundeyin out and thank him. He thanked David Hundeyin that if not for the due diligence, the due investigations, those critical roles David Hundeyin played, nobody would have understood that Tinubu was never a graduate of Chicago State Universities. I mean, these were the allegations that were said by Atiku. David Hundeyin provided some evidences, but until today, all these things are still contested. They took that matter even in the court of law in the United States, and those cases are still pending. We must begin to appreciate some of our elements. And because Nigeria, we are not practicing democracy where there's no freedom of speech, since the past 2 years, David Hundeyin has not been able to step his feet in Nigeria. When Elon Musk read all the good works of David Hundeyin, Donald Trump, who is desperate to recover all the looted resources of the United States of America. But wait, we must begin to be scared of the Nigerian corrupt politicians. Are you telling me now the Nigerian corrupt politicians are not just looting the Nigerian resources? You are not telling me now the Nigerian politicians are now working hand in hand with some corrupt elements in the Democratic Party in America to loot the American resources? And when they now loot it, they are bringing it back to Nigeria. So they are into an exchange of loot. The Nigerian resource that is looted is taken to America. The American resources that is looted is brought down into Nigeria. What a very fertile relationship. This is why we must thank Donald Trump. And this is why Elon Musk must dig deep. Because at this stage, we need to know those elements behind our current predicament. But we shouldn't look too far. You know, there were allegations that the Buhari regime sponsored the Biden election with $150 million. Why would Nigeria that is poor, Nigeria that cannot boast of 24 hours electricity, Nigeria that cannot boast that its road network has good, smooth, well-developed infrastructure to at least 60% across the nation, will just take 150 million from the federal purse? Because that money is not Buhari's money. He took that money from the Nigerian purse, coffers, went ahead and donated it into the administration of Biden campaign. Why were they doing that? It is clear. Because they knew that under the Obama regime, they came on board because Obama interfered in the Nigerian election. And ever since then, there has been a finance that has always come into Nigeria, which is through Usaid. The same Usaid that has been fingered to be a major financier of terrorism in the north. This is why we saw the reluctancy of the APC regime, most especially under Buhari, to tackle and fight Boko Haram. This is why we see that under the regime of Buhari, they said that they have reintegrated over 8 to 10,000 repented Boko Harams, who in its right senses, show me any working country, show me any serious nation that will start reintegrating terrorists back into the society. Tell me any serious country that caught people right in the act of committing terrorism, killing, bombing the innocent Nigerian people, and instead of them to send these people to life imprisonment, send them to high concentration encampments where they can be used for farming and all manner of productive activities to push the Nigeria forward. But instead, the Buhari regime started this nonsense by reintegrating them back. That is why we must understand that this terrorism was intentionally brought upon the Nigerian people, financed by the Barack Obama regime, so that the Nigeria can be destabilized, so that Nigeria will not push forward. You will see it was when the APC came on board that these agitators, all of them all sprang up. We have the Showarel, we have the Nnamdi Kanu, we have the Aisha Yusufu, and even at that then, David Hundeyin regained his voice for a better Nigeria. You know, because we must get it. United States of America under the Democratic Party never wanted progress for Nigeria and by extension for Africa. But Donald Trump came on board. He saw the weird things going on. He saw that these things that are going on are not good. First and foremost, these things will destabilize America on the long run. And secondly, even if they think it is for their own benefit that when Africa is destabilized, they can exploit Africa. But Donald Trump has saw this. He said we must begin to regain our strength. And we as Africans, most especially Nigerians, we are happy. Because we know that when Elon Musk digs in, Elon Musk has no regard for anybody. He will begin to expose those that have always been in corruption. Those that have always benefited for the corrupt regime of Barack Obama. We can see now that when Trump has become the president, Tinubu has been doing everything to avoid the Trump administration. Tinubu has been trying to be a gentle boy. Tinubu has been trying to be a good and obedient boy because he knows that if he misyands, he knows that if he misbehaves, it's Donald Trump who has vowed to expose, to declassify the assassination of this president. I can't recall his name now. John Kennedy. Are you now telling me it is Donald Trump that will not declassify the corrupt cases of Tinubu? If Tinubu starts to move mad, if Tinubu tries to move mad, to lose guard, Donald Trump's attack dog, which is Elon Musk, will begin to unveil. But these are the things, these are the prayers. And this is why David Hundeyin, as he stands today, is one of the most wanted person in Nigeria, because he has been able to expose how these our corrupt leaders have been able to have a bargain, a deadly, an evil bargain deal with the democratic leaders. When the speaker, Perry, announced that Usaid is used for a sinister agenda in Nigeria, we saw how so many defenders of Buhari came on board. They started saying all manner of things that, oh, they were trying to twist the conversations. They started saying, well, it is a Christian country that is financing terrorism in an Islamic country. You know, they are generalizing that Nigeria is an Islamic state. Just trying to deflect. What they must get is this. The corrupt politicians, which of course includes majority of the APC members, saw an opportunity. They started receiving grants from the likes of Obama down to Biden, just for evil to continue. They used that same methodology to kick out a Jonathan, because when they felt that the insecurity will expose Jonathan, will weaken Jonathan's popularity, because Jonathan was beginning to become one of the best presidents Nigeria has ever had. But when the insecurity started, they politicized it. And then they went ahead to the United States of America to meet with Obama. How can you help us? And we'll see that immediately when they met with Obama, Jonathan wanted to seek for firearms for America. They placed an embargo on Jonathan and Nigeria, that they will not sell any weapons to Nigeria to combat bandits. I think that is a clear signal, that is instructive, that why would America, that calls himself a global police, that always says they fight for democracy, that try to say that they are for the protection of every sovereign nation's interest, why would they place an embargo on Nigeria when they know that Nigeria is about to dive into full-blown insecurity? It was because they had a negotiation. They had a negotiation with Buhari and Tinubu, because Tinubu was there. I mean, we saw an interview where Tinubu said that I was invited by the Democratic Party. And this was the period of 2011, 2012, 2013. And that was when we started having insecurity issues in Nigeria, when it became fully expanded and exploded, before it got to this level of deterioration that even those that called insecurity just to take power can no longer control and bear it. Let us listen to some interviews of David Hundeyin exposing how the Usaid is being used by the corrupt APC chieftains to destabilize Nigeria.
Well, if USAID is responsible for funding, for creating the instability in the first place, and then they are sort of treating the symptoms, or making some cursory, pretense at treating the symptoms, but they are the ones who are behind it in the first place, then they are not, their presence is not helping. If I stick a needle into your neck and I'm siphoning off your blood, right, and you're slowly dying, and then at the same time, I'm feeding you vitamins and nutrients and fruits so that you stay alive and you keep producing blood, right? I can claim that I'm the one keeping you alive because I'm feeding you, but I'm also the one killing you. So the solution is not for me, is not for the status quo to remain. The solution is for me to take the needle out, so that whether I'm feeding you or not makes no difference to you. That's what USAID needs to do in Nigeria. They need to leave us alone.
All right, now, David.
And we will sort out whatever issues that we have.
David, let's look at the why. In your submission, you use very interesting words that I found very interesting. By the way, don't look at a gift horse in the mouth. Totally describes the situation. However, you mentioned nondescript organizations here in Nigeria that have perhaps maybe received certain funds from these agencies outside of the country, in this case, USAID. You spoke of $700 million. Is it dollars or not?
I agree with him partially. I agree with him in the sense that the State Department obviously plays a leading role in directing and coordinating the sort of strategic stabilization of African countries, including Nigeria. Where I absolutely and totally disagree with him is the idea that USAID is somehow innocent in all of this. Obviously, he comes from the civil society space in Nigeria, which is largely funded by USAID and its affiliates. So I can understand why, maybe out of some sense of solidarity, he doesn't want to sort of throw his colleagues under the bus. However, if you've been following the story, and if you've been following the characters involved in the story, it's very clear that USAID has at least as much involvement as the State Department does. Because how this works is that, unlike the State Department, which is obviously subject to Congress, or the CIA, which is subject to the president, CIA needs approval from the president to carry out any operation. USAID was not established by an act of Congress and doesn't need permission from the president. So it's basically a law unto itself. And the budget for USAID is more than that of the CIA and the State Department put together. It's between $40 and $50 billion annually. So essentially, the USAID functions as the sort of slush fund of the U.S. intelligence community. This has been very well established if you've been following figures like Mike Pence, who has been doing a lot of great expository work about this. He used to work at the State Department. So basically, the USAID is the big slush fund. And how money is moved to terrorists or separatists or whatever is that it's done in plain sight, right? Unlike maybe the CIA or the State Department, who do covert things, but they do it directly. What USAID will do is that they will say that they're funding some organization that I don't know, feeds hungry children somewhere in northern Nigeria, and they'll fund it with $10 million. And when you go onto the ground, you realize that if not even a fraction of that money made it there, right? But where that money actually made it to was the bad actors in question. That is how, that is the true extent of USAID involvement in this story. And that's not my opinion. That's what the Americans themselves are revealing. Obviously, this is happening because of a political dispute in Washington, D.C. The current occupants are trying to purge the influence of the previous occupants, which is why everybody's bringing out everybody's secrets now. It's not as if they didn't know this before. So obviously we know that they're not doing this out of the sincerity of their hearts or because anybody has any interest in fighting terrorism or whatnot. We know they're doing it just to discredit the Democrats. But at the end of the day, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right? If something which, I mean, as at 2009, we were not visually familiar with the concept of terror as a Nigerian thing. Terrorism didn't exist in 2009. And just 4 years later, by 2013, terrorism was an everyday headline in Nigeria. We've been very harshly, very rudely, and very violently brought into this world that we're not familiar with. And that has happened through the actions of American administrations, primarily Democrats. So if it happens that you then have this sort of wrecking ball sort of administration in power now that is not even Republican in the conventional sense, basically just want to burn everything down, out of some sense of vengeance or whatever, you should take it because that's in our favor, right? If our problem, or one of our biggest problems, is that we have this huge 800-pound gorilla that is sponsoring instability in our region and making it impossible for us to grow, and now that gorilla is having internal issues and all these things are becoming exposed, that gives us a window of opportunity to do what needs to be done. So I completely disagree with Mr. Rafsanjani in his attempt to sort of extricate USAID